You know, life changes suddenly, without warning, like a cold wind blowing through the door on any Sunday. But before this silence, before this emptiness that accompanies me now, there was a time when everything seemed to be in place. There was the sound of children running around the yard, the smell of rain falling on the earth, the creaking of iron pots on the wood stove. I woke up early. I've always been one of those people who likes to watch the sun rise behind the Kentucky hills. There was a special peace in that golden light breaking through the morning mist. I would take a sip of strong, bitter coffee and grab my flared skirt, ready to start the day. My body was on automatic, but my heart, oh, my heart always stayed at home. Inside the house was Mary, her hair tied up in a blue scarf that was already a bit faded, hands deep in dough, rushing, because the kids would be waking up soon, and their hunger was bigger than the house itself. 8 mouths, my friend ate. There were kids everywhere. One wanting cereal, another crying to be held, another already jumping on the porch without even washing his face. And Mary handled it all, and never complained. I never heard that woman complain, not when the pile of laundry grew, not when the beans burned at the bottom of the pot, not when there was nothing left in the pantry, but flour and a bit of sugar. If you're hearing this story, tell me where you're listening from. I keep wondering where these memories of mine go. Who is sharing this memory with me now? Back then, I still thought love was enough. And to be honest, it was what we didn't. Having money, we made up for with presents. Worked hard every day, planting corn, beans, potatoes, and sometimes even tried our luck with pumpkins. Some years were good, some were tough. When the rain disappeared, it was sweat that watered the land. Even tired, I came home gladly, because there, in that tiny corner, life was happening. The kids waited for me with sparkling eyes. One would come running to show me a crooked drawing. Another would bring a twig from the yard as if it were a birthday gift, the littlest always in Mary's arms, cheeks red from the sun. And she'd look at me with a silent smile, as if to say, we made it through another day. We didn't say, I love you. Didn't know much about those words, but we showed it in other ways. She'd save me an extra piece of meat when she could. I'd bring her a bunch of collard greens just because I knew she liked it. Our love was made of those little things, those certain details. The nights were noisy, one crying with a stomachache, another tossing and turning, another wetting the bed. Me, exhausted from work, I'd get up. Mary would come too, tuck them in, make tea, clean everything up. There was no rest, but we had each other. And when, finally, everyone slept, that was the only moment of silence. We'd sit together on the porch, looking at the darkness of the road. She'd rest her head on my shoulder. And there, in that shared silence, I discovered what peace was. But my friend, life is full of curves you don't see coming. One of those curves got me on a cold march. It started with a cough, then a fever. Mary said it was just tiredness, but the sparkle in her eyes faded away. I made tea with every herb you can think of, prayed, took her to the community hospital, but every day she grew quieter, weaker. One afternoon, she looked at me differently. It was a look of farewell. Without a word, she squeezed my hand, and that was it. No noise, no scream, no time to understand. The kids didn't know what was happening. The youngest cried, calling for his mom. The older ones pretended nothing had changed. Me, I just knew I didn't have a choice. The next day, I put on a clean shirt, tied my shoes, and went to bury the great love of my life. Widower in my early 40s, with 8 kids in my arms. From that day on, I became 2, father and mother. Learned to braid hair, wash clothes with lye soap, close my ears to pain, and open my chest to courage. Every night was a new battle. Fever, hunger, longing, missing myself, because I no longer knew who I was. But I kept going, not for me, but for them. And the farm didn't wait for my pain. The soil wanted to be plowed, the corn had to be harvested, the beans needed planting. So I cried hidden in the fields, among the weeds, let my tears fall where no one could see. Then I'd wipe them away and go back home with a forced smile, just so the kids wouldn't feel even more. Each of them reacted in their own way. One became rebellious, another went silent, one even stopped eating. I tried to be everything, but sometimes I just couldn't manage. There were nights I sat on the edge of the bed, looking at the kids, sleeping, asking Mary if she could see all this from up there, if she thought I was being strong or weak. But whenever I thought about giving up, I remembered her look, and that was what kept me standing. It were hard years. There were times when there wasn't even soap to wash the clothes, weeks when the rice was just water, days when I got sick and still went to the fields, because if I didn't work, no one ate. And even so, they grew up. Time is stubborn. It goes by without asking permission. One day, without even noticing, the kids stopped being kids. They left one by one, some for the big city, others to seek their own luck. And I was left alone. And that's when another kind of silence begins, a silence no one sees. The house seemed different after Mary was gone. It wasn't just her absence. It was like everything was a little out of place. The curtain no longer danced in the wind the same way. The stove took longer to light. Even the smell of the house seemed different. But what hurt the most was the silence, not of peace, but of emptiness. The first breakfast I made alone for the kids, my hands trembled. I broke 2 eggs on the floor, burned the bread in the pan. The littlest looked at me with teary eyes and whispered, "Is Mommy coming back?" My ground disappeared. I had to swallow my tears, pull the boy into my arms, and say what I myself didn't believe. "No, son. Now she's watching over us from above." After that, there was no more time to mourn. The kids needed all of me, and I only had half to give. I started sleeping with one ear open. Coughs, fevers, fights. Everything was on me. The day broke without letting me feel anything. I put on my boots, still dizzy from exhaustion, and went to the field, because the land doesn't feel sorry. The land just asks you to endure. In the beginning, lots of people showed up. Neighbors, relatives, brought cakes, said prayers, spoke kindly. But with time, everything faded away. The smell of cake cooled, the church benches emptied, each neighbor went back to their own problems. And there I was, with 8 kids and the weight of the world. I was never one to ask for help, but I had to learn. There were nights I knocked on Mrs. Thompson's door to borrow rice. There were months when I sold even my father's watch to buy medicine. There were days I lacked everything except courage. The school called every week. "Mr. Ernest, your son got into a fight. Mr. Ernest, your daughter didn't do her homework." Me, tired, with cracked hands, went over there. Heard lots of lectures from new teachers who'd never raised even a dog. But I listened quietly, because I knew they were suffering too, in their own way. Over time, I got the hang of it. Made crooked braids in Lorena's hair, but she smiled. Helped little Johnny with his homework, even without understanding the math. Gave everyone bucket baths, just to make sure they were clean. After the hard work, when the sun was already setting behind the trees, it was bath time. The water from the well was as cold as winter in Ohio, but they screamed, laughed, pushed each other. It was our moment, our way of being a family, even in the midst of simplicity. One day, I sat everyone down in the living room, looked into each one's eyes, sighed. "I'm not perfect, never was a mother, but I promise I'll give my all, so no one here goes without." The oldest, Michael, already 15, just nodded, too mature for his age. He became my right hand, helped me on the farm, looked after the little ones, took care of the house when I went out. Grew up fast, maybe too fast. I remember one night when Emily, my middle daughter, had a high fever. There was no money for medicine. I ran to Mr. Thomas' store and asked for credit. He scratched his chin, looked at me and said, "Take this medicine. Pay later with potatoes or whatever you can." I never forgot that gesture. I ran home, gave her the medicine, stayed up all night by her side. When the sun rose, the fever broke. Emily opened her eyes and whispered, "I dreamed of Mommy. She said you're taking good care of us." I cried right there, quietly, so she wouldn't be scared. There were times when I wanted to disappear, to lie down in the middle of the cornfield and let the world end right there. But it only took one of them calling me Dad for me to remember. I was the pillar, the last wall. Once, a distant cousin showed up, coming from New York. Iron suit, talk of opportunities. Told me to sell the farm, take the kids to the city, start over. I looked at him and said, "My new life is here. These 8 are what make me get up every day." He laughed, said I was stubborn. But it wasn't stubbornness, it was love. Time went on. One by one, each child found their wings. Michael got a job at a lumber mill, moved out. Emily, when she turned 18, went to study in another city. The others left too. And I was left behind, the first night alone in that house. A silence that ached in my bones. No dirty dishes, no lights on, no hurried footsteps in the hallway. I sat in the old armchair until sunrise. Didn't even cry, just waited for a noise that never came. It wasn't their fault. Life pulls you, the city calls, the world swallows you up. It's just that the old man here was left with only memories. The walls started talking to me. Every corner held a story. The pencil mark where Jake measured. His height, the door Michael promised to fix and never did. The dish towel Emily gave me one Christmas. I kept it all as if it were gold, because it's all I had left. There was a Sunday I sat on the porch, put on the linen shirt Mary loved, stayed there waiting. No one came. The weather changed, a heavy rain fell, and I was there, alone, waiting. Made coffee for 2, out of habit or stubbornness. The smell of coffee still brings her back, and for a few seconds, I swear, I hear her voice in the kitchen saying the beans will burn, but now they never burn, because it's just me keeping an eye on them. When you're young, time runs. After a certain point, it gets heavy. The clock ticks the same, but inside, everything slows down. That's how I started feeling the days after being left alone. No more set time to wake up. My body woke up early, but the reason wasn't the same. No bubbling pot, no kids tripping down the hallway. Just birdsong and the wind through the window. I started living on memories. Still went to the fields, but not with the same strength. My legs ached, my breath ran out sooner. Sometimes I'd just stand there, looking at the sky, wondering if this was all there was left. Me, the land, and the silence. My kids were alive, thank God, healthy, with their own families, their own routines, but far away. I'm not talking about miles. I'm talking about absence. I couldn't even remember the last time I heard Dad spoken from the heart, and not out of obligation. In the beginning, they still called. 1 month, 2, someone would call, "Hey Dad, how are things over there?" And I'd say I was fine, even when I wasn't. Even when the roof was leaking. Even when food ran out. Even when my back hurt so bad I couldn't sleep. We protect ourselves, and I always did that. That's why they got used to the idea that I could handle anything, that I was indestructible. One day, I went to town to sort out some bank stuff. It had been ages since I went out. Put on my good pants, pressed shirt, took the bus, stayed quiet. In line, a lady looked at me with pity, asked if I needed help. I said no. But truth is, it had been so long since someone looked me in the eyes that it almost broke me. I left, walked slowly to the square, sat on a bench and watched life go by. Kids playing, couples smiling, young people running. And me, invisible. I came home with a bag of flour, another of sugar. That's all I went out for. But it felt like I'd come back from another world. The house was the same. Creaky gate, chair in the corner, dish towel hanging. But me, I was different. I started talking to myself. Sometimes out loud, sometimes just in my head. Answered questions no one asked. Told stories no one wanted to hear. Remembered every detail. The first time Jake rode a bike, the scolding. I gave Emily when she broke the window, the fear Michael had of thunder. It all came back as if time turned around. But along with the good memories, the painful ones came too. The day I yelled for no reason. The time I didn't listen to a request. The school event I missed because the harvest couldn't wait. Little things at the time, but now huge. I wondered if they remembered those too. And if they did, was that what pushed them away? I started losing strength, little by little. First my sight. It got blurry when the sun was strong. Then my back. I had to get up slowly, with a groan. Leaned on the walls of the house, and on a cane my neighbor, Mr. Smith, lent me. I'd laugh, say it was nothing. But what hurt was the pride, not the body. Food got simpler. Rice, beans, eggs. When there was meat, it was a feast. I started eating less, sleeping less, talking less. Counted my steps to the fence, to the chicken coop. Counted not out of habit, but out of fear. Fear of forgetting. Fear my mind would fail and no one would notice. Because after all, who would notice? One night, the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, heart racing, thinking it was one of mine. It was a mistake. The woman apologized and hung up. Just hearing someone's voice, I stood there, holding the phone to my ear, listening to the silence as if it were company. I started writing in an old notebook I found in a box. Wrote loose sentences, kids' names, birthdays, memories of Mary. Sometimes just a word, then I'd close it. It was my way to remember who I was, to know I still existed. One Sunday, I decided to clean the whole house. Moved everything, washed curtains, scrubbed the walls. It was like I wanted to get rid of the dust of the years. When I finished, I sat on the living room floor and cried. Cried quietly, not out of despair, but out of longing for myself, for who I was, for who I hoped might still come. Got a Christmas card from Emily. It arrived late. She wrote she was living far away, working a lot, that she missed me. I read that card 20 times, kept it in the drawer with the things I can't lose. Got a photo from Michael, with his kids, my grandkids. Never met them in person, only through the photo. One of them carries my name. I know because he wrote on the back, "This is little Ernest." I held that photo as if holding time. But a photograph is cold. It doesn't call me Grandpa. It doesn't speak. Sometimes I talk to Mary, looking up at the sky, at the portrait on the wall, at the empty pillow beside me in bed. I ask for strength, for patience. I ask her to watch over me from wherever she is. Because when everything falls silent, she's the one I think of. It all began with her, and even after everything, she's still where I find shelter. One random afternoon, the sky a little cloudy, wind blowing through the kitchen, the smell of clean laundry spread around the house. There I was, sunk into the old wooden chair, feet tucked into a pair of worn slippers I no longer remembered where they came from. I made a strong coffee. This drowsiness that comes with age is tricky. Arrives when you don't want it, vanishes when you need it most. Then I heard the gate bang. At first I thought it was just the wind, but then it happened again. 1, 2. Knocks and a low, shy voice. Dad. I got up slowly, not sure if it was a dream, a memory, or some lost miracle from another time. I walked across the living room softly, as if the floor were new to me. When I opened the door, I froze. Number. Words, no gesture, no breath. It was Michael, my oldest son. He looked different. Thinner hair, rounder belly, tired eyes. Next to him, a boy of about 8. This is Will, Dad, your grandson. It took me a while to understand. When I realized, my legs trembled. I leaned against the doorframe, trying to smile, but the smile came with a knot in my chest. I looked at the boy. He looked back, a bit wary, a bit curious. Come in, my children. This house is yours. I couldn't say much else. I warmed up the leftover coffee, grabbed 2 chipped mugs, and set them on the table as if it were a celebration. Michael sat in silence. The boy stayed standing, looking around as if that old home were a magical place or some forgotten scene. Michael explained, a bit awkward. He doesn't talk much, but he understands everything. An observer, just like his grandmother. When he said, "Grandmother," my eyes filled with tears. I sat down, took a deep breath. Michael stirred his coffee, as if searching for courage at the bottom of the cup. And after a while, he said, "I should have come sooner." I didn't answer. I didn't want to hear excuses, but I didn't want them to leave either. I just nodded, the way you do when you understand everything without needing words. We stayed there. Me, the son who left, the grandson I had never met. 3 generations around a table that had seen it all. The conversation started full of silences, and sometimes silence says more than any words. When the coffee got cold, Michael walked around the house, slowly opened the door of the room. He slept in as a boy. The Yankees poster I stuck on the wall is still there. He laughed. "I thought you'd taken it down." I laughed too. I never had the courage. Taking it down would be accepting you weren't coming back. He didn't answer, but his eyes spoke. We never knew how to handle emotion head on. He came back to the living room, watching Will play with a piece of wood he'd picked up from the yard. Kids can turn anything into a toy. "Are you all right here?" he asked. I shrugged. "I'm alive, I have my land, my coffee, my story." He looked at me as if wanting to say more, but not knowing how. Sometimes I thought about writing, sending a letter, but I thought it was better if you didn't know about us. I stayed silent. It wasn't the time to blame or to forgive. It was just time to be together. Later, he said he had to go, that he had an appointment, that he just came to show me the boy, that maybe he'd come back another day. I thanked him, truly. I stood at the gate until their car disappeared down the road. When the dust settled, I looked at the chair he'd used, the cushions still dented, as if it held the weight of everything that hadn't been said. I went back inside, but I wasn't the same. Something had shifted. A crack had opened in the concrete of silence. And with the longing, a little thread of hope appeared. Maybe the children still remembered. Maybe it wasn't too late. That night, I slept differently, heart lighter, still full of questions. The sound of the boy's voice stayed in my mind so little, but a good echo. A sound of life the house hadn't heard in a long time. At first, when the children started leaving, there was still hope. A visit here, a phone call there, a birthday card, a belated present. I clung to every crumb, like someone gripping a thin rope in a wild river. But over time, all that became promises. The promises became excuses, and the excuses became silence. I found out that forgetting has a smell, The stuffy smell of a closed house, of reheated food, of clothes left on the line. It has a taste, too. The taste of cold coffee, stale bread, watery beans. It has a sound, not a sound you hear with your ears, but in your chest. The sound of a gate that never opens, of a door that never slams, of a phone that never rings. At the end of every afternoon, I looked at the road as if waiting for someone to return from a place that maybe didn't even exist anymore. It was automatic. My body would get up from the chair, go to the gate, and just stare at the horizon, even knowing no one was coming. Time taught me. Hope doesn't die, it just hides. Sometimes it hides so well we mistake it for routine. I learned not to expect, but every time I heard a car, my heart would race, even if it was just a neighbor or a delivery driver. One day, I woke up early. It wasn't even a work day, because my body hadn't handled hard work for a while now. But sleep disappeared before the night was over. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the sounds of dawn. The rooster crowing, wood creaking, wind whistling at the door. I grabbed the old notebook, started writing names of the children, of Mary. Then I just sat staring at the paper, hoping the words would come on their own. After coffee, I went to clean the cupboards, rummage through things, dust everything. I opened the drawer of the embroidered napkins she made, still white, still smelling of her. I took one, sat in the chair, and just ran the cloth through my fingers, remembering how she used to scold me for wiping my forehead with the dish towel. "That's for drying dishes, Ernest. Your forehead's not a plate." And she'd laugh, and I'd laugh with her. In the afternoon, I decided to go out, walked slowly to the cemetery, took a flower. It wasn't a special date, but I felt like it. Greeted the caretaker, who recognized me and said it had been a while since I'd come by. I stayed silent, cleaned the grave, set the flower, sat on the ground, and talked to her. Told her about the kids, the house, the grandson who showed up, the back pain. Talked about the silence. And I cried not loudly, but in that way that the tear falls slowly, drying along the way. On the way back, I stopped at Mr. Jenkins' store, bought soap, a box of candles, a pack of matches. The cashier asked if I needed help. I thanked him, said no. Walked home feeling the sun on my back, the bag in my hand, and an even greater weight on my shoulders. At home, I made rice with eggs, ate alone, in silence. Then I sat on the porch, lit a candle, and watched the insects dance around the flame. I thought, loneliness is like this. It attracts, burns, vanishes. I stayed there until the candle burned out. In the days that followed, my body grew heavier. My legs complained, my eyes stung, my memory failed in small pieces. I let pots burn, doors stay open, names slipped from my mouth. Sometimes I called for the grandson who wasn't there, spoke to Mary out loud, asked no one where I put my slippers. I started getting truly old, not just in body, but in the way of being. One afternoon, I saw through the window a neighbor's son washing the car with his father. They laughed, splashed water. The boy shouted, "Dad, look at this. Dad, come here." That went right through me, not with envy, but with absence. I used to be that dad, the one who heard dad all day long. Now, if someone calls me that, it's by mistake. I never held a grudge, but some things stay the emptiness. It lives on the couch, in the bed, on the kitchen bench. Walks with me to the well. Comes in with me when night falls. The worst thing is you get used to it. You learn to talk to it. Another day, I found the old radio in a drawer. Put in batteries, it still worked. Tuned to any station, and one of those old songs Mary liked came on. I listened until dark. That song took me far away to a lost Sunday, with the kids running in the yard, her on the porch, the smell of roast chicken. It all came back for a second, but was gone the next. When the music stopped, only the static remained from the radio, from the soul. It was almost noon when I heard footsteps in the yard. I was sitting in the kitchen, peeling potatoes for lunch, when I heard the gravel crunch slow. It wasn't a neighbors just walk by. It was footsteps that pause, that look, that hesitate. I got up slowly, wiped my hands on the old apron, went to the door. The sun made my eyes squint. There she was, Emily, my middle daughter, the one who was born in silence, with eyes that already seemed to know the world. She was different, but it was her. Scarf around her neck, dark glasses, bag slung over her shoulder. She looked at me as if searching for a reaction, and I just stood there. My body froze. Inside, everything was jumping, but on the outside, I was just silence. She gave a small, shy smile. "Hi, Dad. Can I have a hug?" Her voice broke me inside. I couldn't say a word. I just opened my arms. She came to me, fit into my embrace, as if time had never passed, as if all those years fit into a single instant. The scent was different, her hair a different color, but the hug was just like when she was a child, when she'd run to hide in me after tripping on the porch. We went inside. I sat, she sat. For a while, we just looked around the house, her eyes wandering over everything that had stayed the same. "It's all just like before, Dad. Even the fridge towel." I nodded. Time passes more slowly here. She looked around at the corners, the old photos, the stove, a bit awkward. I should have come sooner. I tried to smile, but it was a smile that hurt, because it was true. BECAUSE, sooner, was already gone, and later had arrived too late. Emily took a package from her bag, a loaf of homemade bread, still warm. "I made it yesterday. I thought you might like it." I took the bread as if it were a treasure. I still like it, always have. We broke the bread, spread butter, drank coffee, and between sips, she started telling me about her life. That she lived far away, worked late, that she got lost along the way, and thought I was being cared for, that I was fine. We imagined so much, Dad, but life doesn't wait for us to understand. I just listened. And in the middle of her words, I saw that she was crying quietly, without a scene. Tears ran down, mixed with the smell of coffee and fresh bread. I took her hand, calloused from a different kind of struggle, and squeezed it. "You've always been brave, Emily, but you don't have to be strong all the time." She smiled again, still crying. "I guess I take after you." We stayed there, two tired adults, surrounded by all that was left of what we once were. She asked about her brothers. I told her what I knew, that Jake moved up north, that John opened a workshop, that Michael had come once with his son, and then disappeared again. "And you, are you managing?" "In my own way, slower, but I'm moving forward." She nodded, in that way of someone who understands everything without it needing to be explained. Emily stayed until the end of the afternoon, wandered the yard, took dead leaves from the garden, looked at the jars on the shelf, laughed at the crooked pans. I remember everything here. We were happy, weren't we? Yes, we were, daughter. Even in hard times. Because we had each other, and that was always enough. She wanted to stay the night, but said she had to go back, too much to do. "Can I come back next month?" "You can. This house is yours, always was. It was just waiting for you to remember the way." I walked her to the gate. Before leaving, she hugged me again, tight, strong. I watched her disappear down the road, the sunset gilding her shoulders. When she rounded the bend, I went back inside, sat in my usual chair, and let the tears fall. On the table, red crumbs and her scent on the dish towel. Small things, but things that remind an old man that he still exists, still matters, that there is still someone in the world who calls him Dad, even after everything. After all the time, after all the silence. Some days you wake up with a full chest. It's not sadness, not happiness. It's something else, a gentle weight, as if your body remembers before your mind. I woke up like that, feeling that something had changed during the night. The light coming in the window looked different. The rooster's crow came later than usual. Even strong coffee didn't chase away the silence. I went out to the yard as always. The lemon tree is still there, stubborn, crooked, full of thorns. Mary's pots are still in the corner, a little dry, but still standing. I ran my hand along the edge of one, felt the cracked ceramic. It was a small pot, painted by hand. She used to say one day she'd teach Emily to make one just like it, but there was never time. I sat in the magnolia's shade, just looking at the sky. I remembered the first time I planted with my father. He gave me a small hoe, made by his own hands, and said, "The land gives back what you give it with patience, son." I didn't understand at the time. Today I understand, all too well. I spent my life giving everything to this land, strength, sweat, mornings. And it gave back what it could: corn, beans, sustenance, exhaustion, and a silence that, sometimes, is heavier than a full hoe. That day I decided to clean out the little back room. Years without touching it, always just pushing more things. Inside, there was everything: boxes of old papers, bits of chair, frameless pictures, broken toys. I found the wooden horse I made for John when he was little. One leg broken, but still whole. I held it in my lap, hearing in my mind the sound of make-believe galloping, the boys shout pretending rodeo. At the bottom of the box, a cloth bundle. I opened it slowly. Inside, the little crochet booties Mary made before Emily was born, pink with a white ribbon. I held them as if holding a piece of her, and it was. It was care, touch, hope, the start of a story. Time has turned this house into a museum with no visitors. Everything still, each object holding a memory. The crooked wooden spoon she used, the bench that creaked, and I promised to fix, the chipped glass only she wanted. All of it there, waiting for her to come back and set things straight, but she didn't come back. That's what hurt the most. I kept thinking about what I'll leave behind, what's left when I'm gone. No inheritance, no money, no land with my name on the deed. Just this old house, this tired land, this battered notebook where I write my memories. Maybe that's it. What remains is what we tell, what we remember, what we loved. The other day, I went to pick up medicine at the pharmacy. Mr. Jenkins isn't there anymore. It's his son now, a polite young man. He called me sir and asked if I wanted to take my things in a bag or in my arms. That's nice. Nobody asks those things anymore. The world is in too much of a hurry, talks too much, listens too little. On the way back, I ran into Mrs. Thompson, an old acquaintance, more hunched than ever, but her eyes still bright. "Ernest, you still hanging in there? I am at a turtle's pace. Better slow than stopped, you know. It's worse to wait for what never comes." She looked at me in that old-fashioned way, not with pity, but with tenderness. They show up when life gets hard. They remember their roots. That's stuck in my head. Roots. We are the roots of those who plant themselves far away. The tree can bear fruit wherever it wants, but the root stays here, quiet, invisible, holding everything up. Being a root is hard. It hurts, but it's what supports it all. I came back home, head full, body weary. Made soup, sat in the rocking chair, looked at her portrait. It's all so calm today, Mary. Too calm, feels like the eve of something. I just don't know what. That night, before sleeping, I left the front door just barely closed, just in case. in case someone remembers. We think longing is just absence, the hole that's left. But some days, longing spreads through the house like a presence. It's in the smell of clean laundry, in the sound of the kettle, in the beam of sunlight on the floor. The other day, I was sweeping the bedroom when I smelled her perfume, that soft orange blossom scent. I stopped, looked around. I felt it again. It wasn't imagination. I don't doubt these things. Longing has its own way of showing up. Some days it squeezes. Some days it just rests a hand on your shoulder. That day, she sat with me at the edge of the bed and stayed. I didn't cry or smile. I just listened to the silence saying something. I opened the drawer with her clothes. I still keep a light blue dress, faded, missing a button. The last one she wore. I thought of giving it away, but I couldn't. There's her shape in it, the stitches only she made, the way she folded it at the waist. I took the dress, ran my hand over it gently, talked to her as I always do. Mary, the garden's weak, but the porch bench is still sturdy. The radio found a new station. Sometimes I think she listens. The other day I dreamed of her, but it was a different dream. She was sitting at the edge of the bed, sewing, with that look of someone who understands everything without needing to say a word. I woke up with my chest full, but at peace, as if she had stopped by just to let me know she was watching. The sense of time inside this house has changed. Some days pass like the wind, others drag on. Sometimes it feels like it's always morning. Sometimes I don't even notice it's gotten dark. Living alone does that. You lose track of time, but gain the measure of memories. The other day, I decided to write a letter. Not to send, just to get it off my chest. I wrote to her everything I never said while she was here. That I should have danced more on Saturday nights. That I should have praised her garlic rice more often. That I should have sat with her on the porch to watch the world go by. It hurts to know we only learn to value things when there's no more time left. I wrote the letter with a trembling hand, the writing shaky, but everything I needed to say was there. Then I folded it, put it in an old envelope, and hid it behind her picture in the living room. Maybe someone will find it one day. Maybe not. In the end, that doesn't really matter. What matters is that, finally, I had spoken. There was a week when the rain didn't stop falling. The house grew damp. The ceiling dripped into a bucket in the corner of the bedroom. The sound of water was constant, like a metronome marking the rhythm of my solitude. Even so, one night the rain let up, and I could hear the frogs croaking in the swamp, the sound of a car passing far away, a radio playing at a neighbor's house. Right there, in the middle of it all, I felt her sitting with me on the kitchen bench. I didn't see, didn't hear, just felt. Like you feel the sun's warmth even with your eyes closed. Her presence never left, it just changed shape. Now she lives in those small details that only I notice. She's in the embroidered tablecloth, in the recipe I tried to remember by heart, in the way I fold the dish towels, in the arrangement of the shelves, in the echo of laughter when the kids played tricks, in the prayer she whispered before sleep. She's in me. And every time someone shows up here, I tell them about her. I talk as if she might arrive any minute, as if she's just outside picking basil. I speak of her like someone calling her back. And maybe, from calling so much, I've learned she never really left. At the end of that rainy week, the sun appeared slowly, shyly, and the smell of wet earth took me back to the day I met her at a summer town festival. She, in a floral dress, laughing at me because I tripped on a bucket and nearly knocked over the punch bowl. That was the beginning of it all, the family, the love, our story. And even though time has taken almost everything, there are things it can never take away. It was early August, clear sky, dry wind, the smell of dust rising from the road. I was sweeping the yard, as I do most days. I like to keep the ground clean, a habit from a life with a full house, respect for whoever steps in, even when no one steps in anymore, even when the footsteps have long since faded. I finished sweeping, sat on the doorstep, and stared at the rosebush I planted by the fence. A thin, crooked branch, grown from a seedling I found abandoned at the market. I planted it expecting nothing, and that day, without warning, there it was, a small flower, but alive, red, stubborn. I leaned closer, gently stroked the petals, and felt something that was neither joy nor sadness. It was hope, the kind of hope you forget you have. I spent the rest of the day quiet, even to myself, cooking without appetite, listening to the radio just for the noise, but thinking about that flower. I remembered that some things bloom even with no care, even in dry seasons, even when you expect nothing at all. And it stayed in me like a seed. That same week, I got a real letter. On the envelope, the name John, the son who left saying he'd be back soon, but never returned. I opened it with trembling hands. The words were few: an apology, a belated recognition. He said he always thought of me, that he told his children about the father who woke before the sun, made medicine from backyard leaves, carried kids on his back and pots in his hands. He said he didn't know how to come back, didn't know if he'd still be welcome. I read slowly, then read again, then held the letter to my chest and just stayed there, eyes closed. He didn't say when he'd come, just asked that if one day he did, I'd know he never forgot. And I believed him, because those who write by hand write with their heart. The next day, I decided to fix the front fence. It had been crooked. For ages, I took the hammer, nails, wire slowly, but I fixed it. The neighbor walked by and joked, expecting visitors, Ernest. I half smiled. Maybe. Or maybe I just want the house to look nice for myself. Afterwards, I changed. The curtain washed the good glasses. Not because I expected anyone, but because I started to feel that maybe there was still time for something to bloom. Just because everything is gone doesn't mean something can't arrive again. On Friday, the radio announced the town festival, the same one where I'd take the kids when they were little, where Mary bought fudge, where Emily won a rag doll at the ring toss. I thought about going, not to meet anyone, just to smell roasted corn, hear the band, see people laughing things you forget about. But I didn't go. I preferred to stay, listening to the sounds of the party drifting in through the window like a good memory. That night, I sat on the porch, the sky full of stars, the wind slipping through the buttons of my shirt. I thought about my grandchildren, the ones I never met. I wondered what it would be like to hear little feet running in the yard, someone shouting "Grandpa" with a mouthful of bread. I don't know if that will ever happen, maybe not. But it doesn't hurt as much to think about it now, because something is different inside. Something that bloomed with that flower, something I didn't even know I could feel again. There are feelings that never die. They just sleep until they bloom again, without warning. Today, I woke before dawn. Not to go out, nothing waiting outside. My body got up out of habit, like it always did, as if I still needed to light the fire or wake a child for school. The silence of the house greeted me as always. Only today it felt like it looked back at me, carried a different weight, not sadness, not emptiness, but acceptance, as if the house was saying, "This is how it is now." I went to the kitchen, put water on to boil, made coffee. While the kettle whistled, I looked at the dish towel hanging from a nail on the wall. One day she embroidered my name there, earnest crooked letters, tiny stitches. I never let anyone take it down. Even faded, it still calls me by name. I sat at the table, coffee in hand, and thought about life. Not like someone making plans, but like someone retracing their steps. I don't know how much longer I have, but I know that everything that's left matters, because it's what makes you remember who you were and all that you still are. And look, I left a lot of marks on this ground, some crooked, some deep, some I'm not even sure stayed, but I left them. I think about my 8 children, each face saved in my memory, each with a story that took its own path, often without realizing it. I gave them everything I had, my body, my time, what I knew, and what I had to learn the hard way. I was a father, a mother, the ground beneath their feet. And even with all the silence that remained, even after so much, I regret nothing. I went to the cupboard, got the notebook where I scribble my memories. It's nearly full now, yellowed pages, loose cover. The writing's shakier than ever, but that's where I find myself. Today, I wrote another page. I started with a simple question. If I had to live it all again, would I? It took me a while to answer, because you don't answer things like that in a hurry. I remembered the days of burning sun on my skin, mud on my boots, kids shouting in the kitchen, Mary hanging laundry on the line. I remembered the days I cried in secret, afraid I couldn't manage, the days when everything was missing except Will. And the more I remembered, the clearer the answer became. Yes, I would live it all again. With the same dry earth, the same aching back, the same longing that follows me like a shadow. Because even the pain made sense. Even the loneliness taught me. I remembered the day Emily showed up after so long, the smell of the bread she brought, the way she looked at me seeking forgiveness without a word. I remembered her hug before she left, how it gave me back a piece of myself. I also remembered John's letter, those shaky words saying he missed me, that he thought of me, that time flew by too fast. I read that letter as if I were listening to the voice of someone who lives in my heart. It's there, tucked between the pages of the notebook. If anyone ever opens it, they'll know that that sun didn't forget everything. Time kept passing. Slowly, the sun dragged itself across a lazy sky. I went out to the yard and saw the rosebush blooming again, 2 small, red, but sturdy flowers. I gently stroked the petals, closed my eyes, and there in the silence, I spoke with Mary. Told her, as I always do, said that things are moving along, the house still stands, that the longing never goes away, but now I've learned how to live. With it, then I went inside, started cleaning the bookshelf. I dusted the pictures. In the family photo, there we were, me and her in the middle, surrounded by kids, everyone smiling a little smile, but smiling. John with a mischievous face, Emily with a ribbon in her hair, Michael already looking like the big brother. I stood there, looking and thinking, this here I made. Me and her. Even with all the absences, no one can take this from me. For lunch, I cooked rice, beans, a piece of dried beef I found at the back of the freezer. I ate slowly, chewing. On memories. The meat was tough, but good. The rice just right. The beans were hers. The way, the flavor. Never quite the same, but close enough. After eating, I sat on the porch. The sun was hot, but the breeze was soft. And that's when I heard footsteps on the road slow light. When I looked, I saw little Will, my grandson, the same one who once came with Michael. He was alone, backpack on his shoulders, sandals on his feet, that same curious look. I opened the gate before he could call out, "Grandpa, can I stay here?" For a while. I didn't ask how long or why. I just opened the door and let him in. He took off his shoes, washed his hands at the kitchen sink, sat at the table, set up his notebook, sharpened his pencil. I wanted to hear some old stories. I smiled, went to the cupboard, got the old notebook, and sat down beside him. I started reading aloud, and he listened like he was hearing a treasure. Sometimes he interrupted, asked questions, laughed out loud at his uncle's mischief. There, at that table, in that instant, I understood that nothing was in vain. When the afternoon faded, he helped me water the garden, laughed at my leaky boots, and before bed asked to learn how to make his great-grandmother's rice. I taught him, he made it. It wasn't quite the same, but it was good. Good enough to remind me. Life goes on even when it feels like everything's gone. At night, after he fell asleep, I sat outside, looking at the starry sky, feeling the gentle breeze in my heart. For the first time in a long time, felt light. If tomorrow is my last day, that's all right. I've lived what I needed to live. I've been everything I could be. Now, I leave what I built in the eyes of that boy sleeping. In there. Because the world spins, time runs, the house empties, but the love you plant that never leaves. I've seen a lot in this life. The sun rise in silence. People leave without goodbyes. Children grow up and forget the way home. I've planted, with calloused hands, cried softly so no one would hear, slept hugging my longing. And you know what? Living more than 80 years is not for everyone. It's not because of the body, which grows weak. It's because of memory. Because remembering sometimes hurts more than feeling. But today, if you have a little time, sit with me a while. I want to tell you my story. No exaggeration, no drama. Just how it was. And if, at the end of this tale, you feel it was worth listening, tell me where you're listening from, just so I'll know how far this memory of mine has reached. No need to hurry. I speak slowly. Life has already taught. And me. Everything spoken from the heart has to be spoken with calm.